Hello everyone, this is Saurabh from Edureka. In today's session, we'll focus on what is Puppet. So without any further ado, let us move forward and have a look at the agenda for today. First, we'll see why we need configuration management. What are the various problems that industries were facing before configuration management was introduced. After that, we'll understand what exactly is configuration management and we'll look at various configuration management tools. After that, we'll focus on Puppet and we'll see the Puppet architecture along with the various Puppet components. And finally, in our hands-on part, we'll learn how to deploy MySQL and PHP using Puppet. So I hope we all are clear with the agenda. So I'll move forward and we'll see what are the various problems before configuration management. So this is the first problem, guys. Let us understand this with an example. Suppose you are a system administrator and your job is to deploy MeanStack, say on 4 nodes. Alright, MeanStack is actually MongoDB Enterprise, AngularJS and Node.js. So you need to deploy MeanStack on 4 nodes. That is not a big issue. You can manually deploy that on 4 nodes. But what happens when your infrastructure becomes huge? You may need to deploy the same MeanStack, say on hundreds of nodes. Now, how will you approach that task? You can't do it manually, because if you do it manually, it'll take a lot of time. Plus, there will be wastage of resources. Along with that, there is a chance of human error. I mean, it increases the risk of human error. All right. So we'll take the same example forward and we'll see what are the other problems before configuration management. Now this is the second problem, guys. So it's fine, like you in the previous step, you have deployed MeanStack on hundreds of nodes manually. Now what happens, there's an updated version of MongoDB available and your organization wants to shift to that updated version. Now how will you do that? You want to go to the updated version of MongoDB. So what you'll do, you'll actually go and manually update MongoDB on all the nodes in your infrastructure, right? So again, that will take a lot of time. But now what happens, that updated version of the software has certain glitches. Your company wants to roll back to the previous version of the software, which is MongoDB in this case. So you want to go back to the previous version. Now how will you do that? Remember, you have not kept the historical record of MongoDB during the updating. I mean, you have updated MongoDB manually on all the nodes. You don't have the record of the previous version of MongoDB. So what you need to do, you need to go and manually reinstall MongoDB on all the nodes. So rollback was a very painful task. I mean, it used to take a lot of time. And we'll see what are the other problems before configuration management. Now this is the third problem, guys. Over here, what happens, you have updated MongoDB in the previous step on, say, development environment and in the testing environment. But when we talk about the production environment, they're still using the previous version of MongoDB. Now what happens, there might be certain applications that work that are not compatible with the previous version of MongoDB, all right? So what happens, developers write a code and that works fine in his own environment or be it his own laptop. After that, it works fine till testing as well. Now when it reaches production, since they are using the older version of MongoDB, which is not compatible with the application that developers have built, so it won't work properly. There might be certain functions which won't work properly in the production environment. So there is an inconsistency in the computing environment, due to which the application might work in the development environment, but in product it is not working properly. So we'll move forward and we'll see what exactly configuration management is. So what is configuration management? Configuration management is basically a process that helps you to manage changes in your infrastructure in a more systematic and structured way. If you're updating a software, you keep a record of what all things you have updated, what all changes you are making in your infrastructure, all those things. And how you achieve configuration management? You achieve that with the help of a very important concept called infrastructure as code. Now what is infrastructure as code? Infrastructure as code simply means that you're writing code for your infrastructure. Let us refer the diagram that is present in front of your screen. Now what happens, in infrastructure as code, you write the code for your infrastructure in one central location. You can call it a server, you can call it a master or whatever you want to call it, all right? Now that code is deployed onto the dev environment, test environment and the product environment. Basically your entire infrastructure, all right? Whatever nodes you want to configure, you configure that with the help of that one central location. So let us take an example, all right? Suppose you want to deploy Apache Tomcat, say on all of your nodes. So what you'll do, in one location, you'll write the code to install Apache Tomcat and then you'll push that onto the nodes which you want to configure. What are the advantages you get here? First of all, the first problem, if you can recall, that configuring large infrastructure was a very hectic job. But because of configuration management, it becomes very easy. How it becomes easy? You just need to write the code in one central location and replicate that on hundreds of nodes. It is that easy. You don't need to go and manually install or update a software on all the nodes. All right. Now the second problem was you cannot roll back to the previous stable version in time. But what happens here, since you have everything well documented in the central location, rolling back to the previous version was not a time consuming task. Now the third problem was there was a variation or inconsistency in various teams like dev team, test team and product team. Like the environment, the computing environment was different in dev, test and product. But with the help of infrastructure as code, what happens, all your three environments, that is dev, test and product, have the same computing environment. So I hope we all are clear with what is configuration management and what is infrastructure as code. So we'll move forward and we'll see what are the different type of configuration management approaches are there. Now there are two types of configuration management approaches. One is push configuration, another is pull configuration. All right. Let me tell you push configuration first. In push configuration, what happens, there's one centralized server and it has all the configurations inside it. If you want to configure certain amount of nodes, all right, say you want to configure 4 nodes as shown in the diagram. So what happens, you push those configurations onto these nodes. There are certain commands that you need to execute on that particular central location, and with the help of that command, those configurations which are present will be pushed onto the nodes. Now let us see what happens in pull configuration. In pull configuration, there is one centralized server, but it won't push all the configurations onto the nodes. What happens, nodes actually poll the central server at say 5 minutes or 10 minutes, basically at periodic intervals, all right? So it will poll the central server for the configurations, and after that it will pull the configurations that are there in the central server. So over here you don't need to execute any command. Nodes will automatically pull all the configurations that are there in the centralized server. And Puppet and Chef both uses pull configuration, but when you talk about push configuration, Ansible and SaltStack uses push configuration. Cool guys, so I'll move forward and we'll look at various configuration management tools. So these are the 4 most widely adopted tools for configuration management. I have highlighted Puppet because in this session we are going to focus on Puppet and it uses pull configuration. And when we talk about SaltStack, it uses push configuration. So does Ansible. Ansible also uses push configuration. Chef also uses the pull configuration. All right. So Puppet and Chef uses pull configuration, but Ansible and SaltStack uses push configuration. So I'll move forward and we'll look at what exactly Puppet is. So Puppet is basically a configuration management tool that is used to deploy a particular application, configure your nodes and manage your servers. Like they can possibly take your servers online and offline as required, configure them and deploy a certain package or an application onto the nodes, all right? With the help of Puppet, you can do that with ease. And the architecture that it uses is master-slave architecture. Let us understand this with an example. So this is Puppet master. Over here, all the configurations are present. And these are all the Puppet agents, all right? So these Puppet agents poll the central or the Puppet master at regular intervals, and whatever configurations are present, it will pull those configurations basically. So let us move forward and focus on the Puppet master-slave architecture. Now this is the Puppet master-slave architecture, guys. Over here what happens, the Puppet agent or the Puppet node sends facts to the Puppet master. And these facts are basically a key value data pair that represents some aspect of slave state. That aspect can be its IP address, uptime, operating system, or whether it's a virtual machine. And then Factor gathers those basic information about Puppet slave, such as hardware details, network settings, operating system, type and version, IP addresses, MAC addresses, all those things. Now these facts are then made available in Puppet master's manifest as variables. Now Puppet master uses those facts that it has received from the Puppet agent or the Puppet node to compile a catalog. That catalog defines how the slave should be configured. And the catalog is a document that describes the desired state for each resource that Puppet master manages on a slave. So it is basically a compilation of all the resources that Puppet master applies to a given slave, as well as the relationship between those resources. So the catalog is compiled by the Puppet master and then it is sent back to the node. And then finally, slave provides data about how it has implemented that catalog and send back a report. So basically the node or the agent sends the report back that the configurations are complete, and they can actually view that in the Puppet dashboard as well. Now what happens, the connection between the node or the Puppet agent and the Puppet master happens with the help of SSL, the secure encryption, all right? Alright guys, so we'll move forward and we'll see how actually the connection between the Puppet master and Puppet node happens. So this is how Puppet master and slave connection happens. What happens, first of all, the Puppet slave, it requests for the Puppet master certificate. Alright, it sends a request for the master certificate, and once Puppet master receives that request, it will send the master certificate. And once Puppet slave has received the master certificate, Puppet master will again send a request to the slave regarding its own certificate. Alright, so it will request for the Puppet agent to send its own certificate. The Puppet slave will generate its own certificate and send it to Puppet master. Now what Puppet master has to do? Puppet master has to sign that certificate. Alright, so once it has signed the certificate, Puppet slave can actually request for the data, alright, or the configurations. And then finally Puppet master will send those configurations onto the Puppet slave. This is how Puppet master and slave communicates. Now let me show you practically how this happens. I have installed Puppet master and Puppet slave on my CentOS machines. Alright, I'm using two virtual machines, one for Puppet master and another for Puppet slave. So let us move forward and execute this practically. Now this is my Puppet master virtual machine. Over here I've already created a Puppet master certificate, but there is no Puppet agent certificate right now. And how will you confirm that? There's a command that is Puppet cert list, and it will display all the certificates that are pending in Puppet master. I mean that are pending for the approval from the master. Alright, so currently there are no certificates available. So what I'll do, I'll go to my Puppet agent and I'll fetch the Puppet master certificate which I've generated earlier, and at the same time generate the Puppet agent certificate and send it to master for signing it. So this is my Puppet agent virtual machine. Now over here, as I've told you earlier as well, I'll generate a Puppet agent certificate, and at the same time I'll fetch the Puppet master certificate, and that agent certificate will be sent to Puppet master and it will sign that Puppet agent certificate. So let us proceed with that. So for that I'll type Puppet agent -t, and here we go. Alright, so it is creating a new SSL key for the Puppet agent, as you can see in the logs itself. So it has sent a certificate request, and this is the fingerprint for that. So exiting, no certificate found, and wait for cert is disabled. So what I need to do is I need to go back to my Puppet master virtual machine and assign this particular certificate that is generated by Puppet agent. Now over here, if you want to see the list of certificates, what you need to do, you need to type Puppet cert list. I have told you earlier as well. So let us see what all certificates are there now. So as you can see that there is a certificate that has been sent by Puppet agent. Alright, so I need to sign this particular certificate. So for that what I'll do, I'll type Puppet cert sign and the name of the certificate, that is Puppet agent, and here we go. So it has successfully signed the certificate that was requested by Puppet agent. Now what I'll do, I'll go back to my Puppet agent virtual image, and over there I'll update the changes that have been made in the Puppet master. Let me first clear my terminal, and now again I'll type Puppet agent -t. Alright, so we have successfully established a secure connection between Puppet master and Puppet agent. Alright, so I'll move forward and we'll see what use case I have for you today. So what we are going to do in today's session, we are going to deploy MySQL and PHP using Puppet. So for that what I'll do, I'll first download the predefined modules for MySQL and PHP that are there in the Puppet Forge. Alright, those modules will actually define the two classes, that is PHP and MySQL. Now you cannot deploy the class directly onto the nodes. So what you need to do, when you in Puppet manifest, you need to declare those classes. Whatever class you have defined, you need to declare those classes. I'll tell you what are manifest modules, so you don't need to worry about that. I'm just giving you a general overview of what we are going to do in today's session. So you just need to declare those two classes, that is PHP and MySQL, and finally just deploy that onto the nodes. It is that simple, guys. So as you can see that there will be a code for PHP and MySQL, and from that Puppet master it will be deployed onto the nodes or the Puppet agents. Fine, so we'll move forward and we'll see what are the various phases in which we'll be implementing the use case. Alright, so first we'll define classes. Alright, classes are nothing but the collection of various resources. How we'll do that? We'll do that with the help of modules. We'll actually download a module from the Puppet Forge, and we'll use that module that defines two classes, as I've told you, PHP and MySQL, and then I'm going to declare that class in the manifest and finally deploy that onto the nodes. All right. So let us move forward, and before actually doing this, it is very important for you to understand certain basics of Puppet, like code basics of Puppet, like what are classes, resources, manifest, modules, all those things. So we'll move forward and understand those things one by one. Now what happens is, first of all, I'll explain you resources, classes, manifests and modules separately. But before that, let me just give you an overview of what are these things, all right? How do they work together? So what happens, there are certain resources, all right? A user is a resource, a file is a resource, basically anything that is there can be considered as a resource. So multiple resources actually combine together to form a class. So now this class, you can declare it in any of the manifests that you want. You can declare it in multiple manifests. All right. And then finally, you can bundle all these manifests together to form a module. Now, let me tell you guys, it is not mandatory that you will combine the resources and define a class. You can actually deploy the resources directly. It is a good practice if you combine the resources in the form of classes, because it becomes easier for you to manage. The same goes for manifests as well. And I'll tell you how to do that as well. You can write a Puppet code and deploy that onto the nodes. And at the same time, it is not necessary for you to bundle the manifest that you're using in the form of modules. But if you do that, it becomes more manageable and it becomes more structured, all right? So it becomes easier for you to handle multiple manifests. All right, so let us move forward and have a look at what exactly are resources and what are classes in Puppet. Now, what are resources? Anything that is there is a resource. A user is a resource. As I've told you, a file can be a resource. Basically, anything that is there can be considered as a resource. So Puppet code is composed primarily of resource declarations. A resource describes something about the state of the system. It can be such as a certain user or a file should exist or a package should be installed. Now here we have the syntax of the resource, all right? First you write the type of the resource, then you give a name to it in the single quotes and various attributes that you want to define. In the example, I've shown you that it will create a file that is inetd.conf, and this attribute will make sure that it is present. So let us execute this practically, guys. I'll again go back to my CentOS virtual machine. Now over here, what I'll do, I'll use the gedit editor. You can use whatever editor you want. And I'll type the path for my manifest directory. And in this directory, I'll define a file, all right, and with the .pp extension. So I'll just name it as a site.pp, and here we go. Now over here, the resource example that I've shown you in the slide, I'll just write the same example and let us see what happens. File, open the braces, now give the path etc/inetd.conf colon, and now I'm going to write the attributes. So I'm going to make sure that it is present, ensure that the file is created, etc inetd.conf comma, and then now close the braces. Just save it and close it. Now what you need to do, you need to go to the Puppet agent once more, and over there I'm going to execute agent-t command that will update the changes made in the Puppet master. Now over here I'll use the Puppet agent-t command and let us see if the file inetd.conf is created or not. Alright, so it has done it successfully. Now what I'll do, just to confirm that, I'll use ls command. For that I'll type ls etc inetd.conf, and as you can see that it has been created. Alright, so we have understood what exactly a resource is in Puppet, right? So now let us see what are classes. Classes are nothing but the group of resources, alright? So you group multiple resources together to form one single class, and you can declare that class in multiple manifests as we have seen earlier. It has a syntax, let us see. First you need to write class, then give a name to that class, open the braces, write the code in the body, and then close the braces. It's very simple. and it is pretty much similar to the other coding languages that you, if you have come across any other coding languages, it is pretty much similar to the class that you define over there as well. All right, guys. So we'll move forward and we'll see what are manifest. So this is Puppet manifest. Now, what exactly it is? Every slave has got its configuration details in Puppet master, and it is written in the native Puppet language. These details are written in the language that Puppet can understand, and that language is termed as manifest. This is manifest. All the Puppet programs are basically termed as manifest. So for example, you can write a manifest in Puppet master that creates a file and installs Apache server on Puppet slaves connected to the Puppet master. All right, so you can see I've given you an example over here. It uses a class that is called Apache, and this class is defined with the help of predefined modules that are there in Puppet Forge, and then various attributes like define the virtual host and the port and the root directory. So basically there are two ways to actually declare a class in Puppet manifest. Either you can just write include and the name of the class, or you can, if you don't want to use the default attributes of that class, you can make the changes in that by using this particular syntax. That is, you write the class, open the braces and the class name, colon, whatever changes or whatever the attributes that you want apart from the one which are there in by default, and then finally close the braces. All right. So now I'll execute a manifest practically that will install Apache on my nodes. All right. Now I need to deploy Apache using Puppets. All right. So what I need to do, I need to write the code to deploy Apache in the manifest directory. I've already created a file with .pp extension, if you can remember when I was talking about resources, right? So now again I'll use the same file, that is site.pp, and I'll write the code to deploy Apache. All right. So what I'll do, I'll use the gedit editor. You can use whatever editor you feel like. etc puppet manifest and site.pp, and here we go. Now over here I'll just delete the resource that I've defined here. I like my screen to be nice and clean. And now I'll write the code to deploy Apache. So for that I'll type package httpd colon. Now I need to ensure it is installed. So for that I'll type ensure installed, give a comma. Now I need to start this Apache service. So for that I'll type service httpd ensure running through a comma. Now close the braces. Just save it and close it. Let me clear my terminal. And now what I'll do, I'll go to my Puppet agent. From there it will pull the configurations that are present in my Puppet master. Now what happens, periodically Puppet agent actually pulls the configuration from Puppet master, and it is around 30 minutes, right? It takes around half an hour. After every half an hour, Puppet agent pulls the configurations from Puppet master, right? So you can configure that as well. If you don't want to do it, just throw in a command puppet agent -t, and it will automatically pull the configurations that are present in the Puppet master. So for that I'll go to my Puppet agent virtual machine. Now over here what I'll do, I'll type a command puppet agent -t, and let us see what happens. So it is done now. Now what I'll do, just to confirm that, I'll open my browser, and over here I'll type the host name of my machine, which is localhost, and let us see if Apache is installed. Alright, so Apache has been successfully installed. Now let us go back to our slides and see what exactly modules are. So what are Puppet modules? Puppet module can be considered as a self-contained bundle of code and data. Let us put it in another way. We can say that Puppet module is a collection of manifests and data, such as facts, files, templates, etc. Alright, and they have a specific directory structure. Modules are basically used for organizing your Puppet code because they allow you to split your code into multiple manifests. So they provide you a proper structure in order to manage your manifest, because in real time you'll be having multiple manifests. To manage those manifests, it is always a good practice to bundle them together in the form of modules. So by default, Puppet modules are present in the directory /etc/puppet/modules. Whatever modules you download from Puppet Forge will be present in this module directory. Alright. Even if you create your own modules, you have to create in this particular directory, that is /etc/puppet/modules. So now let us start the most awaited topic of today's session. That is deploying PHP and MySQL using Puppet. So what I'm going to do, I've told you earlier as well, but I'll just give you a quick recap. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to download the two modules. One is for PHP and another is for MySQL. So those two modules will actually define PHP and MySQL class for me. Now after that, I need to declare that class in the manifest, inside.pp file present in the Puppet manifest. So I'll declare that class in the manifest, and then finally I'll throw in a command puppet agent -t in my agent, and it will pull those configurations and PHP and MySQL will be deployed. So basically when you download a module, you are defining a class. You cannot directly deploy that class. You need to declare it in the manifest. And now I'll again go back to my CentOS box. Now over here what I'll do, I'll download the MySQL module from the Puppet Forge. So for that I'll type Puppet module install Puppet Labs -MySQL -- give the version name. So I will use 3.10.0, and here we go. So what is happening here? As you can see, it is saying preparing to install into /etc/puppet/modules, alright? So it will be installed in this directory. Apart from that, it is actually downloading this from the forgeapi.puppetlabs.com. So it is done now. That means we have successfully installed MySQL module from Puppet Forge. Alright, let me just clear my terminal, and now I will install PHP modules. For that, I'll type Puppet module install -PHP version, that is 4.0.0 beta 1, and here we go. So it is done now. That means we have successfully installed two modules. One is PHP, another is MySQL. Alright, let me show you where it is present in my machine. So what I'll do, I'll just hit an ls command and I'll show you in Puppet modules, and here we go. So as you can see that there's a MySQL module and PHP module that we have just downloaded from Puppet Forge. Now what I need to do is, I have defined MySQL and PHP class, but I need to declare that in the site.pp file present in the Puppet manifest. So for that, what I'll do, I'll first use the gedit editor. You can use whatever editor that you want. I'm saying it again and again, but you can use whatever editor that you want. I personally prefer gedit. And now manifest site.pp, and here we go. Now as I've told you earlier as well, I like my screen to be clean and nice, so I'll just remove this, and over here I will just declare the two classes, that is MySQL and PHP. Include MySQL server, and in the next line I'll include the PHP class. So for that I'll type PHP, just save it. Now close it. Let me clear my terminal. Now what I'll do, I'll go to my Puppet agent, and from there I'll hit a command Puppet agent -t that will pull the configurations from Puppet master. So let us just proceed with that. Let me first clear my terminal, and now I'll type Puppet agent -t, and here we go. So we have successfully deployed PHP and MySQL using Puppet. Alright, let me just clear my terminal, and I'll just confirm it by typing MySQL -v. Alright, so this will display the version. Now I'll just exit from here, and now I'll show you the PHP version. So for that I'll type PHP -version, and here we go. Alright, so this means that we have successfully installed PHP and MySQL using Puppet. Thank you and have a great day.